Welcome everyone to Bar Student to Barrister, the podcast on your journey into pupillage and of course your journey thereafter into professional practice. And I am absolutely delighted today to welcome Christa Richmond. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
Christa is the Director of Education here at the Middle Temple. In fact, we're sitting here today in the beautiful Prince's Room of the Middle Temple. Thank you so much for organising that. It's wonderful. We're going to talk today about education. We're going to talk about Inns of Court, particularly the Middle Temple. And I'm going to start, as I very often do, by reading out something about Christa, in fact, from her profile on the Middle Temple website, which I hope will give us an interesting insight just to start off with. Of course, we're going to hear an awful lot more as we go on. And it says this: Christa Richmond is responsible for the Inn's Education Department, which looks after the cradle to grave provision of education, training and general advice for members and prospective members of the Inn. The department's remit includes admission to the Inn, scholarships, call to the bar, as well as training and education for students, pupils and practitioners. A graduate of Stuttgart University, Christa taught German at Bristol University for a number of years before working for Cumberland Lodge as a conference coordinator. She first joined the Middle Temple to work with Michael Sherrard when he established the Inn's Advocacy training programme, and she became head of department in 2002. That means you must love this job, Christa, because that's 23 years.
Absolutely. 23 years in this job and actually almost 31 years with the Inn. So.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to ask you really about that cradle to grave journey and what it means for people who particularly are thinking about a career at the bar. One of the concepts, if you like, of this podcast is to demystify much of what the bar is, what a barrister does, and also, I think, what an Inn of Court is. Because for a lot of people, they've heard about the Inns of Court, they've heard about the Middle Temple, but they don't actually know really what it's all about. So can I go to the heart of that right now? What is an Inn of Court? What is the Honourable Society of the Middle Temple?
Well, you may well ask. I think there are a lot of people who don't know about it. And in fact, a lot of people would have no need to know about it. So let me start. I mean, if you started a concept of training for any profession now, you probably wouldn't start with the Inn of Court. But I'm really pleased they are in existence. It's obviously an historical concept. In the 14th century, when the universities weren't teaching law, this was the way this was where you learned your law. And at the time, there were more than the four we've got now. I can only speak for Middle Temple, but my colleagues at the other end would probably say something very similar. So, to my mind, it's a professional organisation, professional community, where you really are involved in picking up the ethos and culture of the profession from the moment you decide that you want to be a barrister. I'm slightly cautious with the word culture because that can be a little bit tainted and sound very exclusive. To my mind, it's the exact opposite. I think every profession has its own culture, and the inns are the place where you get inducted into that culture and pick it up almost in passing. At least that's the idea.
So when one looks at the Inn, the more that I've worked for the Inns of Court College of Advocacy, I can see really the beating heart of an Inn really is its education. There's obviously the collegiate aspect, there's the ability for barristers to meet one another, there are committees, there are student committees, there are advocacy competitions, there are dinners where people are able to get together, and there's lots of other things too, such as not least call to the bar, and I'll be asking you about that. But what drove you to be the Director of Education, which must be in many ways one of the most senior positions within the Inn?
It's actually like so many things in life, something that happened because I was in the right place at the right time, because circumstances conspired to do just to get me just here. I first started working here. I mean, you gave a brief overview of my CV, and obviously that's first of all teaching and education broadly, then conference organising, which kind of combines the two. It's quite a lot of aspects of administration, and again working with people, putting together substantive programs and so forth. And it was really out of that I I heard about the job with Michael Sherrard, great Michael Sherrard, great advocate, together with his colleague Michael Hill at Gray's Inn. The two of them really instigated advocacy training at the Inns in its current format. And when he got going, he said he wanted an administrator who knew about, well, who was suitable for the role. And obviously with my background in education and admin, that seemed an attractive proposition. So I applied and I got it, and I worked with Michael Sherrard for really many years until the job of head of department became available, and by then I knew the Inn quite well, and I thought this is a role that really attracts me. What I find great about the Inns, and obviously by extension about my role, is that it's there is the tradition, obviously, but there is a constant effort to make that tradition relevant for what is required now. And I thought, this is actually a wonderful field to be involved in, and to sort of essentially apply what I've learned in various roles before then. But at the end of the day, I mean, nobody leaves school and says, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be director of education of an Inn of Court.
No.
It's just life put this in my way, and I'm deeply grateful for it. As you say, I've been in the role for such a long time. I absolutely love it.
Well, that's fantastic. So for people listening, if you're going to join the Middle Temple relatively soon, you will undoubtedly meet Christa. I'm sure that's going to happen.
It's unavoidable.
but if, let's say, I mean, I'm a member of the Middle Temple, and I joined a long time ago, Christa. 1992, in fact, was my year of call. So that's a while ago. But were you here then?
No, I wasn't. I started in 94.
94. We just missed each other.
Yes.
Caught up with each other in the end.
It would have been Ansia.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I was thinking about my journey to the bar and joining an Inn of Court, of course there's 4. How would I go about joining an Inn of Court? Specifically, let's focus on the Middle Temple, because that's, after all, where we are. So how would I go about joining an Inn of Court? Is it a simple process, or I just send in a form? What happens?
Well, I think it's comparatively simple once you meet a certain number of conditions, and that's of course the same for all 4 Inns.
Of course.
And as a preliminary remark, I would just say it's a bit like the sorting hat, and I would recommend to any student who hasn't made up their mind yet to go and see all 4 of us, to see which one essentially speaks to them, because it is going to be your professional home for the remainder of your time you're active, and it better be something where you feel happy. So each of us will say our own Inn. I love Middle Temple, my colleague at Lincoln's loves Lincoln's, etc. So there's nothing wrong or good about any of us. You find your home. So in order to join, you have to be on a law course, on a degree course, law degree course, or have the admission to a conversion course. Yep. And it can't be any old law course. And I'm sorry, I got to refer to my notes here.
No, I understand. So, Christa, so do I. So do I.
So the course has to cover the core subjects, and they are criminal law, equity and trusts, EU law, because obviously they're still relevant.
Yep.
Contract, tort, property and land law, and public law, that's constitutional and administrative law and human rights.
Yep.
Those core subjects are set down by the Bar Standards Board, who regulate all aspects of our training anyway. And that is actually a warning to some students, because, of course, there are law-related courses which don't cover all of those criminology, for example, would only have a tiny bit of it. So any student who is interested in pursuing a career at the bar needs to be sure that they pick up on all those courses.
I mean, it's a good point, because I deal with admissions on behalf of the Inns of Court College of Advocacy, and I think it's a really good red flag you've raised there, because they're called the Foundation of Legal Knowledge subjects. There's 7 of them. You've just read them out, and yes, they are prescribed. They are required for a law conversion course. They're included in a standard law degree in any event. But if you've done a non-law degree, yes, you have to do a conversion course, usually the graduate diploma in law, as it's called, but it goes on by other names as well, like everything does these days.
Exactly.
And you're absolutely right. Sometimes people think, well, I've done some form of legal master's degree, but it doesn't include those Foundation of Legal Knowledge subjects, and therefore people have got to go on and do those subjects. So thank you for raising that.
No, not at all. So obviously you've got to be en route or already have got a law degree. You then have to be a fit and proper person to become a practicing barrister. So that means no criminal convictions, no director's disqualification order, no academic misconduct at any stage. It's not necessarily a complete hindrance if you have any of those, because if it happens, that will be referred to the Inns Conduct Committee, which consists of representatives of all the 4 Inns, as well as quite a substantial number of lay people who obviously represent the public interest. But a step before the referral, obviously, what you do is, we've got the details on our website. You complete the form, which feeds straight into our database. You have to submit certified copies of on your ID, obviously academic qualifications and 1 or 2 other things. And they have to be certified copies. You'd be stunned how many people don't understand what a certified copy is. Okay. But once you've got all of that, to me, it sounds straightforward. Yeah.
I mean, it's worthwhile for everyone watching, listening to this particular episode. I'm going to put links to all of these things in the podcast notes, so people can clarify for themselves exactly what's required,
That's really
including
helpful.
what certified copies are.
You'd be surprised. We actually have a page on that.
Yeah.
This is what a certified. This is how you get one.
Yeah.
I know. It's like so many of things. We have a lot of detailed information, which to some people will say, well, do they think I'm an idiot? We don't think you're an idiot, but a lot of people just sort of need a bit of help with it. So we do actually, we think it's easier to put more information than you need on there, perhaps, rather than wanting too few.
And just in terms of joining, because you can join as a student member.
That's right.
And then, of course, there's call to the bar, and we'll come to that. When can I, if I'm a student doing a law degree, does that mean I can join now? Or?
You can, yeah. I mean, that's you can start in your first year if you like. There is a rule that you have then to start the bar course within 6 years.
Okay.
But that should be easily done. If you join in year 1, you've got 6 years to get yourself sorted out for the bar course. Yeah, so very straightforward. And obviously that has benefits.
Yeah.
You can start using the Inn's facilities. You can use the library. All right, if you're in at a university way away from London, that might not necessarily be helpful. But if you live here or come here for the holidays, you can use them. You can come for lunch in Hall if you like. You can start undertaking qualifying sessions, and I know we're going to talk about those later. But you can sort of start networking. I should say very few people start as early as that. But if somebody is really keen and really interested in getting their feet under the table, that's a very nice way of doing it. Also, the admission fees go up year after year. So
that's always a bonus. And it's a one-off fee, isn't it?
It's a one-off fee, yeah.
For life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extraordinary.
It really is, yeah.
So it's not a standing order. It's a one-off. Okay. What about if I am doing a non-law degree? And I'm thinking about becoming a barrister. I think it's correct, isn't it? I can't, if I'm doing a degree, I don't know, whatever it might be, English, geography, I can't join in at that stage.
That's right.
So I'd have to be doing, or at least enrolled on a a conversion course?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we need some sort of evidence that this is really the way you want to go.
Absolutely.
And obviously, first year law degree, that's clear.
Yeah.
First year English degree, not so clear, even if that is your intention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's got to be a bit more evidence behind it.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Can I move on to money?
Yeah.
The subject of money, because I know that for so many students, of course, it's really, really difficult. Obviously, university is expensive.
Yeah.
If people coming to do their bar training, that's an expensive course over a year, or part-time over 2 years. And so people are thinking, how am I going to afford to pay for my bar training? Or if they've done a subject other than the law at their first degree, how am I going to afford my conversion course? And there's no secret about this, that the Inns combined provide over £5 million a year towards bar student scholarships and conversion scholarships. And that is irrespective of, I should say, of where you do your bar training. So how does one choose which inn to go to? Do you just look at all the scholarships and think, I want that one? And then if you're going through the process, what is the process? What does a student have to do? Is it just online, or do they have to knock on your door? You're probably going to scream and say, no, not knock on my door, it's all online. But what approach should a student take?
I mean, the first thing to bear in mind is that you don't have to be a member of the inn to apply for a scholarship.
Okay.
Although, of course, it's a good idea to pick the one where you actually do want to be a member. Although what we have seen sometimes is that people apply for a scholarship with one inn, don't get it, and then go to another inn to be admitted, or try again, actually, a second year. That's entirely possible. Now, we all got the same deadline because of a little administrative kink this year that didn't work out. But in principle, we've all got the same deadline. So from next year onward, that'll be the last Friday in October. You can only apply to one inn, and we do check. Our data policies allow us to share the names just for that particular
I'm
purpose.
really glad you said that. I apologise for butting in, but
No.
I heard a barrister at recently, no names, no pactorial, but saying apply to all of the inns for scholarships.
And then pick the best.
That is absolutely not appropriate, is it?
It's not appropriate. And in fact, our form, I don't know what the others say, our application form says I have only applied to one inn. And if we then discover they applied to another one, that's the end of that one, because obviously it's a false declaration.
Absolutely.
And I mean, the reason we have to do it's obvious, really. I mean, if somebody gets applies to 3 inns, they're a good student. They get a scholarship from all 3 inns. They then pick one. I mean, it's just administratively. It's actually difficult enough to do the scholarship interviews, because we interview everybody. That's typically about 320 interviews over 3 days. That's a phenomenal amount of work, because you get three practitioners giving up their time to do this, giving up their time to prepare. And it's hard work, and if you think that's multiplied by several inns, I mean, it would just be an enormous. I
still remember Christa coming down for my scholarship.
Do you?
I still remember. I was absolutely petrified, but I did get a scholarship.
Brilliant.
I was delighted, even though I thought I'd done particularly badly. And I'd forgotten what modules I was doing at university, and I didn't think that was a very good start when I was asked that question. But I'd put something down because I think I was trying to say that, all of the things I've been successful at. And weirdly, one of them was cross country. And the bencher looked at me quizzically and he said, "Do you like cross country?" And I looked at him and I said, "Honestly, no, I hate it." And I think at that moment we had a connection. And I think that's the only thing that got me a scholarship.
Well, interestingly, I think quite a lot of students who do get scholarships think they haven't got it, because what tends to happen is if you realise, I mean, I say I'm there as an administrator, but the three panelists, once they realise that somebody is onto a good thing, obviously they will get challenged, and then that can actually lead to an impression that the panel sounds a bit hostile, even though they are not.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily sound it, just because it's a challenging question. And then, of course, the challenging question might not necessarily get a perfect answer. So the student often walks out and think, oh God, I messed this one up, when really what they've proved was they can cope with a challenging situation.
Absolutely. which fundamentally is very much what the bar is all about.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, it makes a huge difference, obviously, to people
Yes.
if they can get a scholarship. It can sometimes be the difference between being able to do the bar training course or the conversion course or not, frankly.
Well, it has two aspects to it in my mind. I mean, obviously there's the money, and everybody needs money.
Yeah.
Or almost everybody. And then, of course, there's the seal of approval of a panel of professionals where you think, okay, if they think I can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, that's what Jodie, who co-hosts a number of the episodes with me, said. She said it felt like the inn putting its hand on your back and saying, you can do this.
Yeah.
And that I think, in a funny sort of way, that was more important than the financial aspect behind it. So yes, that's a really lovely point to make. Okay, so Christa, in terms of scholarships, what advice would you give to a student who's thinking of making that application?
First of all, the whole point about the interviews is that they're not really an exam you can prepare for, because we feel that would be, again, not a level playing field, because some people come from an institution where those kind of things are trained, and others start from scratch. There's always a little bit of unevenness, obviously, but we try to reduce it as much as we can. So what I would say is be very clear about why you want to be a barrister.
Yeah.
Ideally, have a little bit of experience behind you. If you haven't managed to get a mini pupillage, at least go to court and see what happens there. Have a bit of an idea of what it means to be an advocate, because one of the questions that might come up is, what do you think makes a good advocate? And if you can only quote something which AI has given you, it's not quite as persuasive as if you can go to court, can say, I've been to court and saw X. So have a good understanding of what the profession entails. Be ready with, be aware of what goes on at the minute. I mean, so for example, last year, you will remember it was the time when Parliament had just passed legislation to say all those sub-postmasters were going to be acquitted, or all their convictions were going to be quashed.
Yes.
Obviously, that had certain constitutional implications. So all of the students were asked, I think almost all the panels asked that question. What do you think of this decision? So, obviously, you needed to be aware. Ideally, you had thought about it a little bit, and if you're going to be a lawyer, you're, of course, expected to have a view on it. But even if you haven't, and there may be questions where you haven't heard about it or haven't thought about it, I would say two important bits. Don't waste time. So if you don't know, just say, I really don't know, let's move on. Because otherwise you waste 3 minutes faffing around, and those are 3 minutes which you might actually perhaps be able to use more profitably.
Absolutely.
For another question. And or demonstrate that you know how to think about it, about a question. So say if you haven't thought about something, say, well, this is completely new to me, but if I had to think about it, I think the following points I would have to do a bit of research on, and then you're on with something, and you can the panel can pursue that. So be ready for. That's probably good advice for any interview.
I was about to say exactly that. I really think it is. Absolutely.
And also, don't hesitate to ask for 10-second pause, rather than just waffle.
Yeah.
The 10 seconds, as you know, is actually much shorter for the listener than it is for the person trying to come to some conclusion. I know it's probably a ridiculous thing to say, but relax, because I mean there's a human level to this, and usually a panel will spend the first few minutes really just settling the candidate down. If you're the candidate who gives the appearance that they don't need settling down, you can actually get into the conversation fairly straightforward. Yeah. It relaxes the panel as well, because they've got that job out of the way, and it works in your favour. It's also part of the skill of an advocate, I think, put your tribunal at ease, give them a chance to relate. That's probably quite an advanced thing to say, but it's once you've got all the other things out of the way, that's probably something to bear in mind.
I love that, because I think it's absolutely true of the bar that it's very important to think about your audience. Take into account whether it's a judge sitting in a Crown Court or in the High Court, or whether you're in the Court of Appeal, or you're having your scholarship interviews, recognising, just giving the numbers as you have, that an awful lot of these either cases or interviews are going through. And yeah, if you can put that panel or that judge at his or her ease, that's only going to work in your favour, isn't it? I think that's really helpful advice.
Actually, there's one more thing I need to say is just reread your application form and what you said in it. One of our questions, and I'm sure the other ones have got something similar, one of our questions is, what's the one question you would like the panel to ask you? And people, sometimes it's a very simple question, sometimes it's something where people, and it's actually quite advisable, something they have been thinking about, and it's a nice opportunity to go into an area which perhaps wouldn't naturally arise in the interview. So first of all, obviously put something which you can speak to and are happy speaking to. And secondly, remember what that question was, because it can happen that people sort of... So now the question is, bleh, and the student goes, what? When 6 months earlier, that's the question they put in their form. So that looks very, very bad.
Yeah, and very easy not to do. Very easy not to do. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. The next matter I want to raise is, and I think this causes some confusion amongst people, because they think, well, the natural path is, if I do a law degree, I then do my bar training course, and then I'm called to the bar, and then I do my pupillage, and hopefully I get a tenancy, and that's it. Or people might be thinking, if they're from a non-law degree background, non-law degree conversion course, the GDL, then they do their bar training course, and then they get called to the bar. But then people hear, oh, but you've got to do your qualifying sessions. Do I do those on the bar training course? No, you don't. You do those with your in. You have to do 10 qualifying sessions, as I understand it.
That's right.
So, Christa, what is a qualifying session? How does all of this work?
Well, the qualifying session really links into the sort of very high-level comment I made earlier, the in as a professional community. There is an educational element to each of them and a collegiate element. The educational element is prescribed by the Bar Standards Board, and again, I've got to refer to my note. It has to touch on one of 5 possible topics, and the topics we have to cover are ethics, standards and values, advocacy skills, legal knowledge, justice and the rule of law, equality, diversity and inclusion, and preparation for pupillage, career development, well-being. Here the prescription is for 10. Students have to do one at least of each of those 5. Within that package, there also has to be one which requires preparation and is interactive. Here at Middle, we take the view that although these are very worthy headings, most sessions you can do will cover more than one, because it's it's a slightly cheesy example, but if you bake a cake, you need, I don't know, flour and water and cream and eggs and sugar. So you don't have a session about sugar, a session about eggs and so forth. It goes together.
Absolutely.
We have devised, I'm deeply grateful to our IT department, who've devised a system to allow us to record this, so a student can actually check which of the topics they've covered and how many times. So that's really great. We try to make it interesting. It should be stuff which is not part of the syllabus of the bar course, because obviously that's what the bar course is for, nor the university, but which really is a link between the profession and your practice, and essentially broadening your horizons. I mean, some things are obvious. There's advocacy training, there's ethics and some ethics questions, but for example, one of the things I'm really proud of here is we've got something called Preparing for Practice,
Yeah.
and that's a link to what used to be the old-fashioned dinners and what we do now. So there will be a dinner with a small number of students, usually about 30 or 40 students, about 10 to 15 practitioners, and it'll be an evening devoted to practice at the criminal bar or at the family bar or whatever it might be. And then we've got some starter questions, as it were, which are scenarios from that area of law, and the students have an opportunity over dinner to discuss that with the practitioners. So, which is actually a good example of how collegiate and educational works together. Or we've got one series which is called Tough Topics, where you have two people presenting two sides of a potentially quite emotive or controversial area. Doesn't have to be law related. And then the students have to practice asking neutral questions of both speakers and summarize neutrally what each speaker has said, regardless of what they think of it. Obviously, a skill which you need at the bar. You might have a client whom you find very distasteful, but you're representing their case and you've got to be able to do it. So that's one of those kind of things I'm really very pleased with, I have to say. There are a few others, philosophy and law. And the students respond very well to that. And I'm happy to say that quite a lot of them do more than the 10 they have to do, because obviously it's a nice...
That's really nice to hear. That says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. And on one of those, I would say the Tough Topics, we've got an hour and a quarter doing this stuff. It's about 50 students and 2 speakers, usually 2 speakers. And then afterwards there'll be a drink and a sandwich, and people are encouraged to speak to the speakers and to each other, so forth. Again, it's all an induction into that professional ethos community and so forth. Again, a cheesy example. I mean, the bar has its values. Obviously, there's the ethics which are written down, but it's more than that. It's how you behave, and you really absorb that by just being exposed to it. I always say to new students, when you grew up, did your mum and dad just put a rule book on the kitchen table, or did they show you how you sort of live your life and how these values work? And that's really what we try to do here in the broadest sense.
That's fantastic. I mean, it really leaps out at me from that about the ability for people really to start to rub shoulders in the nicest possible sense with the practicing bar,
Indeed.
to really get a sense of, in that broader context that you so beautifully described, really what being a barrister is all about.
Exactly. And we've got preparation for pupillage as one of the elements.
Yeah.
But that makes it sound sort of a specific topic. I think the whole thing is a preparing for pupillage, because it means you become familiar with the whole world. You won't get as nervous as perhaps you did a year ago when you walk into a set of chambers, because you've already met a few people in that world. So I think it's part of that whole package, really.
Let's talk about call to the bar. We talked about earlier applying to become to join an inn essentially as a student member. What does one, before we get to what actually happens during the call ceremony, what does one have to do to first of all to make themselves eligible for call, and then to apply for call?
Right, eligible, I mean, you probably apply for call before you've done everything you need to do, because there's a lengthy process to be gone through.
Yeah.
And so the 3 points you need to hit, even after having applied, before we can call you, is obviously successful completion of the bar course, attendance at these 10 qualifying sessions or more, as some people do.
Sure.
And finally, the criminal records check. And that can take some time. The inns have subcontracted that because obviously there's an art to it, and we simply don't have the qualified staff to do it. So if it's just a UK check, that's comparatively straightforward. We have a lot of international students, as you will know, and depending on the jurisdictions, that can take a long time. So do give it time, and actually expect to pay some more, because some of those are quite pricey. So once you've got those 3, then you can be called. As I say, we encourage people to apply way before they, as in a few months before they expect to be called. Again, probably each inn has got its own procedure. What we do here is we've got one cycle which starts in March, actually with a July call. So if you apply for the July call and you can't do the July, your application will be carried over to November, and if you can't do that, it'll be carried on to the following March. But after that, it's a new cycle, and you have to start all over again. So there can be a delay. Obviously, you expect to be called in July. You find you're having to do a resit, then obviously it gets moved to November.
Sure.
These things happen. So,
these things happen, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I pass all of I make my application, I pass my fit and proper person test, criminal records checks, all of that. Fantastic. Chris Kessling, you can come along to, for example, November call. So I'm very, very excited. When I asked you about this, Christa, actually, when we had a meeting, your face just lit up about the call, which I thought was fabulous, because you, of course, go to the call ceremonies. So describe to us what happens at a call to the bar ceremony.
I didn't realise I was quite that transparent, but yeah, it is actually one of my absolute favourite things, because it is the culmination of a long slog, lots of blood, sweat and tears, as it were, and it is a really proud moment and a watershed, and the families come and so forth. And I've done, actually, I meant to look it up, but I've done about 165 by now. So and they don't get stale. It's a new exciting thing every time, because the students are excited, and it's a very solemn moment to my mind. Again, slight differences between the inns. As you say, here at Middle, everybody wears the wig and gown for the first time. The ceremony itself then is, the students will be lined up in hall in the order in which they're going to be called. Master Reader and Master Treasurer, are the two senior officers of the inn, are the central figures in the ceremony. And Master Reader, and I hope you'll allow me to read it out,
Please do.
starts the ceremony by reminding the students of their obligations once they are barristers. And it reads, "Student members of the Middle Temple, being called to the degree of the Utter Bar, you have declared that for as long as you remain a barrister, you will use your knowledge and skills in keeping with the principles and ethics of the profession, uphold the rule of law, and in doing so comply with the code of conduct and core duties of the Bar of England and Wales. You have also accepted the obligation to follow the regulations of the profession and to undertake continual improvement of your professional knowledge and competence." That's quite a tall order, and it's a good moment to remind everyone that that's what they do, and you can see it in their faces that they, oops, this is me in the future. I think that's a really important moment. And then obviously there's the moment, and I always point it out to them when I brief them beforehand, that it's a split second when the treasurer says, "I hereby call you to the degree of the Utter Bar." You may be so preoccupied with your gown and say, "Do I look right in the camera?" and so forth, that focus on that. And again, you can see that happens. And then they sign their name in the call book, which of course goes back in records. It's a current one, but it's in the tradition that goes back to, I don't know, probably 16th century in our archive. And it's meaningful. And
Absolutely.
I think whatever they do, and as we know, many unfortunately will not end up as a practicing barrister, but they have that ethos and that value system, and they're reminded of it at that moment, and I think it is quite a meaningful moment. And then of course there's the joy of it. I mean, there's the family, and quite often the families will have been there for the first time and get excited, and they would have had, as you say, nobody knows what an inn of court is, so they come and they think it's all terribly forbidding, and then they realise everybody is really friendly and it's a good place. And in recent years, it's come into fashion that people bring huge bunches of flowers. So at the end of the ceremony, everybody wanders around with these. Anybody watching, do not bring helium balloons. We don't allow them in hall. People try, but.
I imagine all these balloons being popped at the entrance.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, it is a great moment, and I love it.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Okay, So we've covered so much about the ins. I know we're only actually going to scratch the surface, but there's a couple of other things that I think are really important here and are mentioned to me consistently about what an inn can offer. And I know here at Middle Temple, you have something called a link scheme. And something else called a marshalling scheme. Just to name but two, Christa. I'm not trying to cover everything. I'd love to, but we probably don't have time for that. But just help us with those. What is a link scheme and what's a marshalling scheme?
Link scheme used to be known as sponsorship scheme, which of course is a bit misleading because sponsorship has got this dual meaning of money now, which this one certainly doesn't. It's essentially putting you in touch with a barrister who is going to be your contact certainly for the duration of the bar course year. It's your friend in the profession, if you like. They might be able to help you with your application form. Does it for pupillage? That is, does it look good? Is there anything else you ought to mention? What should a CV look like? Those kind of things. Also, perhaps the kind of advice which the inn can't give, which is, what sort of chambers should I apply to? I mean, obviously there are various leagues, and you really ought to find the one where you've got a realistic chance. And as an outsider, and as a student you are an outsider to some extent, you may not know whether you're pitching your applications right, and the link barrister might be able to help you with that. They might also help you, a bit less important now that the dining isn't such a central aspect of training, but anything that requires a little bit of perhaps knowledge of etiquette or something. Some students are very nervous of that, and the link barrister might be the one who advises them on that. Just all the things which perhaps a student might be embarrassed to ask at the inn, the link barrister should be there for.
So it's a part of an extension of what we've already discussed, which is, I guess, the process of familiarisation.
Exactly. Yeah. Becoming part of the whole scene.
Absolutely. Okay.
That's right. And marshalling is essentially spending a few days with a judge, which is a very educational experience. I've done it myself, as it happens, just one day, but that was enough.
Where did they send you?
I went to the Old Bailey with Bernard.
Well.
And it was, you sit on the bench next to the judge, and it's very educational to see just how much you see in court. I mean, essentially, a barrister not paying attention or shuffling their papers or scratching their bum or what. I mean, it's sort of all the things you do subconsciously, they all make an impression. And I don't think you necessarily realise just how much the judge can see. And then obviously it's an opportunity to see how a judge's mind works. I mean, the things that irritate a judge or that they're looking for in a barrister, if they have an opportunity to talk to that with a judge, that's just invaluable learning experience. Unfortunately, I think we managed to place most of the people who ask for marshalling places. Obviously, judges are very busy people these days. They don't just sit in judgment. They have lots of managerial responsibilities. So they haven't got the bandwidth to take as many marshals as perhaps even they would like to.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of support from the judiciary, and we're deeply grateful for that because it's such an important thing. Another thing which we offer, which might actually be useful to be aware of, is we offer something called mock interviews for pupils. So if you secure a pupillage interview, we can put you in touch with someone who takes you through one just to, again, take away the nervousness.
I think that's so useful, and I mean, I completely agree. People should take that up. I was speaking to someone very recently, actually, a guest on this podcast. He said he's gone to a very good set, but said, I know that when I started out on this journey, I was awful at interviews. I just didn't get it, and he said, I was really going out wherever I could to get precisely what you've just mentioned. So I think that's a great thing to have mentioned. Thank you. Okay, I know from our discussions, Christa, that really it's important to you to be a friendly face, welcoming. Your team's very welcoming to students, and I'm sure that all of you as a team have an awful lot of interactions with student members and have done for so many years. Have any particular, if I can put it this way, themes developed, or are they obvious to you in terms of perhaps the obstacles that students face or their key concerns that become apparent to you over time?
I think the most obvious one is obviously the worry about pupillage.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, and everybody knows, there's this discrepancy between people who complete the bar course and even complete it very well, and the number of pupillage places that are then available. In other words, you know, you might produce 1,000 good students a year, but the profession only needs 600, and that's a real headache. The only thing I would say for that is, don't lose heart. Be clear that this is what you really want to do. Just sort of keep at it. So that's a major thing. I think there will still be students. I mean, as you know, we are all the 4 Inns are encouraging students, if they are suitable for the bar, regardless of what their background is. And some people will be very insecure if they've never been in a context like this. I mean, as you know, the bar isn't like that anymore. In fact, it's one of my, if I may become personal for a moment, my husband Bernard is going to be treasurer at the Inn next year, which is probably as much the highest office you can get at the Inn. And his father was a school caretaker, and it really wasn't sung at his cradle that this is what he would do. So the profession is very open to talent doing what it needs to do.
Absolutely.
But talent doesn't necessarily have that confidence at the early stages. So I think that's one of the issues we sometimes see. And the only thing you can do there is just to keep at it and make sure that, you know, the whole experience isn't as terrifying as it could be. In fact, that's one of the things which I think is a really important part of our role, is to be welcoming and to make sure that people feel they can have a place in this world.
And I'm so pleased you said that, because I think when people, I always describe the Inns of these wonderful oases, really, in the centre of London. They're unique, but what they do have in common is architectural beauty, certainly, and I think also that they are very much focused on assisting students and assisting people to become barristers, as you beautifully put earlier, from cradle to grave, very much so. I feel quite cheeky actually asking you this, because you've given such wonderful advice that I think anyone listening will be very much assisted by. But from all of your knowledge, Christa, over so many years, what piece of advice would you give to me if I was all of those years ago and I was thinking of becoming a barrister, joining the Middle Temple, joining an Inn of Court and setting out on my journey? What would you say to me that might be of real assistance to me in getting me through what lies ahead?
Well, a number of things. I would say the most important one is figure out whether that really, really is the only thing you want to do. Because with all the difficulties we've been looking at, and the money you're going to expend, the stress you're going to have, that's only worth doing if you really, really want to do that. And you will only get a pupillage if that comes across that this is really what you want to do. To find out whether that's really what you want to do, go to court, get mini pupillages, try to see as much as you can. And in context with that, that sounds sort of slightly obvious, but I'll say it anyway. Keep a record of everything you're doing. Have a little notebook, or have it on the computer. This is different generation. If you have a mini pupillage in Fountain Court, make a note of the name of the chambers, the name of the people you met, the dates, anything you saw, anything that struck you, because at the moment you're doing this, it's so obvious. But 2 years later, when you are in the scholarship interview or in the pupillage interview, you'll have forgotten it. So being able to go back to those practical memories is really important. And probably, I said it before, just don't lose heart. The people who will succeed in the end are the ones who are able to have 3 years worth of rejections in pupillage, but the 4th year they'll make it.
Yeah.
And it's because they've picked themselves up, dusted themselves down, and gone ahead with the next one. I think actually that's a crucial skill to have as a barrister anyway, because logic tells you that you're going to lose some cases, and if you're not able to cope with that, it's become a bit of a fashionable word, resilience. But there isn't another word for it, so you've got to be able to do that.
It used to be called rolling with the punches, I think.
Yeah, that's a good one as well. I'll adopt that in the future. Yeah, I think those are the most important things, really.
Yeah.
And obviously, lots of subsections to this, but that's what I would say. Be sure that this is what you want to do. Find out as much as you can about the profession as you go along, and don't lose heart.
Christa, it's been an absolute delight, and thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Everyone, thank you to Christa for her wise words and such valuable information to all of you. I very much hope you enjoy this episode of Bar Student to Barrister. As you know, we're with you every Friday. Thank you again to Christa. And thank you to all of you, of course, for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.